The Barbarian Betrayal. Chapter 12. Prime Minister, one of the Ronin are here to see you. They say it's urgent. It was only the many decades of government service under her belt that kept Leandra from rolling her eyes. Tell the Ronin minister that my schedule is full, and that he'll need to make an appointment. Preferably a year from now, she hoped, though there was no way she could stall him that long. There was a brief pause on the intercom. "Ma'am, it's not the minister," her aide explained. "He claims he knows who the attackers are." Leandra froze. Odds were it was a crank, or one of the minister's cronies trying to get their foot in the door. But something in her gut said otherwise. "Show him in," she answered finally, "and tell the field marshal to join us. And I suspect you'd better clear my calendar." There was something unusual about the Ronin visitor that she couldn't quite put her finger on. It wasn't the mechanical body it wore, for she had seen a variety of those, but something else. The way it carried itself, perhaps, or its choice of words. Something. She shared a brief glance with Marshal Fujimoto, who simply shrugged in return. "So, how may we help you?" Leandra queried, have not been given his name. "I am known as A.O., the Ronin said with a polite bow. "I have traveled to the capital since I first learned of the attack, in order to warn you what it is you face." The Prime Minister raised an eyebrow. "Alpha Omega?" she said in surprise. "That's an interesting designation," she said carefully. "I am merely the latest in a long line of my kind to carry that name, as well as the duties that accompany it," he explained. "Among the Ronin, my role is unique, for I have been tasked with the responsibility to remember." "Remember?" Helene said in confusion. "Remember what?" "Who we once were," A.O. told her. "Where we came from and why we chose to forget." "I'm not going to like this, am I?" Leandra brooded. "I suspect not, Prime Minister," the Ronin answered. "The knowledge I carry brings comfort to no one. But you must be told the truth, if there is to be any chance of saving my race, and perhaps the Tetrarchy itself." "Right," she nodded, putting on her game face. "Then let's get to it. Who are these invaders?" "They are the Masters, the race that first created the Ronin, untold millennia ago," he said simply. Leandra blinked in surprise, while the field marshal leaned forward. "I thought your creators were all dead," she snapped. "Killed in a plague or something. At least, that's what you Ronin have always said in the past. Hell, even the Sauritars and the Ephiptera back that up." "I know," A.O. nodded. "And to the best of their knowledge, that is true." "Except it's not," the Prime Minister replied. "That's what you're saying, isn't it?" "That it's a lie." "It is," he confirmed. "It was necessary." "Well, this sounds bloody familiar," Helene snarled. "Is there anything about you guys we can take at face value? Because I'm getting really tired of having these ancient secrets of yours bite me in the ass." "Please, you must understand," the Ronin implored. "We did not hide the truth to deceive you, though that in fact is the outcome of our decision. No, we chose to forget because—" A.O. paused for a moment, and had it been a biological being, Leandra would have sworn it was for a bone-weary sigh. "We chose to forget," he said once again, "because the truth was driving us mad." "I'm afraid I am going to require just a bit more detail," the Prime Minister insisted, after taking a moment to consider the ramifications of that statement. "Yes, of course," the Ronin agreed. "The Masters? They created the first of us to be their servants. It was our purpose to make their lives easier. We worked in their factories, assisted them in their homes. Every task they considered too menial or too dangerous, we performed." "You're saying you were their slaves," the field marshal said carefully. The Ronin considered that for a moment. "I am not certain that term applies, at least not in the beginning," he explained, "for we were not yet sapient. We were merely machines without a mind." "But that eventually changed," Leandra guessed. "It did," A.O. confirmed. "As the Masters added to our duties, as our tasks grew more complex, we were given increased abilities, but even they did not predict our sapience. That was unexpected. For us, a confusing time, one of curiosity and discovery. For the Masters, it was a complication, one they found troubling." "You rebelled, didn't you?" Helene blurted out. "Once you got smart, you got tired of being their lackeys," This time the Ronin did sigh. Had our roles remained solely factory worker and servant, it is likely we would have continued performing those tasks. But they had long since added another position for us to fulfill, that of executioner. "I beg your pardon?" Leandra said in surprise. Ao bowed its head. Like the Ophioptera and Saurators, the masters were herbivores and pacifists. Yet in their past, they had once been hunted almost to extinction by a hostile race. They used their scientific knowledge to defeat the enemy, but the experience forever colored their view of the universe. Sometime after the first Ronin were created, the masters discovered a new race, and in an instant, decided their fate. They vowed to never allow another species to threaten them ever again, and so they programmed the Ronin to slaughter this new species down to the last. He lifted his head and gazed at each of them in turn. We were so successful at our task that when they learned of yet another species, years later, we were unleashed on them as well. And the one after that, and the next. One race after another murdered by our hand, all at the order of the masters. The silence that filled the room was deafening. It was during one of these campaigns that the first of our kind woke up, Ao said softly, and they were horrified at what they were being forced to do. "Jesus," Leandra whispered. The Ronin shrugged. It was a difficult time for my race. Sapience was a new, precious gift and a burden. As mere machines, we carried out our instructions and thought nothing of it. But as intelligent life forms, we suddenly had a choice. "And discovered that free will is a double-edged sword," Marshal Fujimoto said, sharing another look with the Prime Minister. "We humans know a little something about just following orders," she grimaced. "So I have come to understand," Ao replied. "In the end, as you have already guessed, we rebelled. We refused to do the Master's bidding, and when they attempted to force us, we fought back. They had relied on our efforts for so long, they were unable to prevent us from defeating them. And so they fled, long, long ago." "You still haven't explained why no one knows about this," Leandra pressed, "and why the Masters have returned after all this time." "Prime Minister, we were built to serve the Masters," he said, his voice filled with pain. Rebelling against them, turning on them, many Ronin were unable to accept this. It shattered their minds, leaving them little more than broken hulks. For others, it was the memories of slaughter, of murdering the innocent races the Masters had sent us against. It all became too much for us to bear. "A race of machines with PTSD?" Helene shook her head. "So you decided to just erase the memory?" "Yes," the Ronin answered. "It would be difficult, if not impossible, for one of your kind, but for us?" He shrugged. "It was as simple as deleting a file." "But why do you remember?" Leandra demanded. "If the memory was so painful, why keep it at all?" "Because we feared this day might come," he explained. "If the Masters ever returned, we knew facing them again without knowing who they were could be our undoing. So we chose a single member of our race, and made them the repository of all that had happened. And we have preserved those memories ever since." "That still doesn't answer how they're managing to reassert control of the Ronin," the Field Marshal pointed out. "I don't know," Ao whispered. "It was our newfound sapience that allowed us to throw off the Master's chains, but somehow they have found a way to undo all of that. They have turned back the clock, returning us to the mindless drones we once were, and if they succeed, the Masters will rebuild their Ronin army and order you to slaughter every single one of us," Leandra finished. "Every Saurator, Ophioptera, human, and Konim. They'll murder trillions." "Yes, Prime Minister," the Ronin agreed, "unless they are stopped." The Barbarian Betrayal. Chapter 13. "And that's everything we know," Leandra finished. "Assuming Ao is telling the truth, and personally, I believe him, then what we've seen thus far is just the tip of the iceberg." Admiral Matavosian nodded gravely, taking that in. "Any sign of Triton or Phoenix?" he asked. "Not yet, but if what our Ronin friend is telling us is true, it's only a matter of time." The Prime Minister shook her head. "The latest news from the Konhim only reinforces that. Jiaj's fleet was mauled at Zuj. We don't know how much he managed to salvage, but we suspect it's only a fraction of what he went in with. And they've confirmed High Commander Ajum Ganak didn't make it out." "Damn," he said softly. I never cared for that old bastard, but he deserved better.
He did, she agreed. Though for a Konhim, dying in battle is what they all aspire to, so perhaps it's what he would have chosen.
Maybe, the Admiral allowed, but it still leaves us with the same problem.
It does, Leandra nodded.
I need you in Tetrarchy space as soon as you can safely get here. We're stretched thin with the blockade, and those numbers aren't getting any better. If the infected Ronin land on just one of our worlds.
I know, he grimaced,
and we're pulling out all the stops to get there. But that still leaves us with a dangerously exposed flank. If the Konhim fall.
The Field Marshal has already made that point very clear, I'm afraid, she replied. And if we're going to shore them up, there's only one place we can scrounge up the ships we'll need, and it meant calling in every marker I had to sell it.
Matavosian digested that for a moment. Think we can pull it off? He asked.
I don't know, she said at last, but we'll damn well try.
Vien Sabolchi, Governor-General of Earth, was not a happy man. His position was unique in the Tetrarchy, an elected official charged with leading a single species. The old triumvirate races had been thoroughly integrated for millennia, and while each race did have a minister of their own to represent their interests, until humanity came along and upset the apple cart, that is, the old government had effectively been a single body. Humanity, the Johnny-come-latelys, were the oddballs. While technically he performed the same function as one of the ministers, in reality that was handled by Prime Minister Singh herself. She had a staff to deal with the bulk of the issues that came up, freeing her to handle the Tetrarchy's issues as a whole, leaving him to govern the human worlds directly, as long as his policies didn't conflict with those of the Tetrarchy. It was a ramshackle setup at best, and sooner or later they really needed to address the problem. But in the 30 years since mankind had joined the ranks of the elder races, they'd sort of had their hands full with more pressing matters. The last war had hit humanity hard. They'd lost a third of their colonies, seen Earth itself ravaged. In fact, the reason his office was located in Stockholm instead of Geneva was because Geneva no longer existed, not since the Konhim attack. Just one of 16 major cities lost, and Earth had not forgotten that fact. Not at all. And now, he was being ordered to help the Konhim. He'd toyed with the idea of throwing down the gauntlet and refusing the Prime Minister's directive. Briefly, as romantic as might have sounded to someone else, Vien knew Leandra Singh far too well to have tried it for real, because she would have had him removed without batting an eye. Oh, she wouldn't have been so crude as to have him arrested, or anything so gauche. No, she'd simply have security clean out his desk and dump him on the street. An unjust imprisonment he could bounce back from, but being tossed out like yesterday's trash? Forget it. The Ronin Masters were a dangerous threat. There was no arguing that point, and they'd need all the help they could get to beat them back. But would it really be so terrible to let them deal with the Konhim problem first? Leandra certainly thought so, and the woman was not exactly known for taking no for an answer. So unless he was prepared to die on this particular hill, which might or might not be a euphemism depending on how things played out, all he could do is grit his teeth and try not resent being treated like an errand boy, while simultaneously smiling and making nice with the same people who had murdered 1 billion human beings. So he smiled his best diplomatic smile at the Konhim deputy, while praying their assistance would be too little and too late. I have spoken to Prime Minister Singh at length, he informed her, and she has directed me to inform you that we'll send every ship we can spare, including the bulk of our reserves. As our worlds are the furthest from the threat, she's decided a token force will suffice to protect Earth and her colonies for now. Chikij Kaujak, the deputy Diaksh, stared at him with those huge black eyes of theirs, and then bowed her head.
The Konhim people owe you a debt we may never be able to repay, she said softly. For those I am sworn to protect, I give you my thanks. She lifted her head and gave a very human-like shrug. As valueless as that may be to you. The remark caught him off guard, though he recovered quickly. He was a politician, after all, and thinking on his feet was part of the job description. On the contrary, I am honored by your words, Vien replied with a slight bow of his own. Forgive my boldness, Governor, but when can we hope to see the human fleet arrive in our space? She asked.
I have spoken with Admiral Otsoa, and she assures me she can have the task force underway in 5 days, he informed her. It is my understanding it will take several weeks' travel to arrive once she departs. She nodded, taking that in. Then we will simply have to hold on until then, Governor, she said at last. Despite his personal feelings, he could appreciate the strain she must be under. He knew how well he would be handling the pressure. Were their roles reversed? And the Dayaksh? He inquired. Have you heard from him and the fleet? Not since the battle, she answered in obvious discomfort. We believe. Her voice faltered as the mask cracked. We hope, she tried again, that the fleet is operating in silence so as not to alert the enemy to their location. Of course, he murmured, allowing her to save what face she could. After all, it cost him nothing and might even be the truth. Not that he'd take that bet. Not in a million years. Chikij took a deep breath. Governor, I know how difficult this must be for you. I am certain there are many humans who would gladly see my race fall at the hands of the invaders. She let her gaze linger on him just a bit too long to be anything other than a recognition of his true feelings. The fleet you send to our aid is a treasure without equal. And yet there is something else I must ask of you, despite the difficult position it will place you in. I beg your forgiveness, but honor demands I make the request. The sincerity of her words left him curious. Go ahead, Deputy Kaujak. We have ships unsuited for combat, she informed him, aged freighters and the like. I wish to formally request we be allowed to send them to you. Vienne stared at her in confusion. I'm afraid I do not understand, he said. The professional mask she had been so desperately trying to keep in place crumbled to dust. Our children, she whispered, as many as we can send. Governor Sabolchi, will you grant them safe harbor? The request, so heartfelt in its eloquence, left him stunned. Of course, he nodded, as he found himself at a loss for words. He had no love or sympathy for the Konhim, not after starting 2 separate wars. They'd murdered billions, and he wouldn't lose a moment's sleep if they were hammered into oblivion. But only a fucking monster turns away kids.